I decided I was curious. I wanted to know. So I started getting into Gwent.
Okay.
I've never played a Witcher game, but I played some Gwent. I did the
It's starting.
did the little intro part, and then I played
Mm-hmm.
some of the basics of how you get the system of the game going. And you got two rows, you got the front row and the back row, and all that stuff. And I I only played as one race so far. I think the Highlanders or something like that,
Okay.
or Northlanders, or anyway.
Northern Kingdoms, I assume.
Excuse me. There we go. Northern Kingdom.
See, I'm in a weird place because I never played the real Gwent. I only played Witcher 3 Gwent.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can say this: it's a pretty fun card game. Uh,
Yep.
it's to me, it's a little less fun than Teppen, but I need to learn more about its decks. Because for me, part of Teppen's enjoyment is like knowing how it works on a lot of different levels, whereas I'm still trying to learn the ins and outs of how things go down in Gwent. But it seems pretty straightforward. There's a.
So
Mhm.
I'm looking at Gwent right now being streamed. And what I'm seeing looks way fucking different
Okay.
than the Gwent that I played in Witcher 3.
Well, here's why I decided to take a look, right? Because so far my experience with card games baked into another larger game has been extremely positive.
Fair enough.
Triple Triad and Pazak are wonderful and need to be protected.
What about Caravan?
I got nothing for you.
Nobody gives a shit about Caravan, let me tell you that.
So, I essentially was thinking that, hey, Gwent is another one of these card games inside of a card game, right? This is probably going to be hopefully as fun as those other two. And it's not, unfortunately. Pazak and Triple Triad are more fun than Gwent. But it's all right.
So
It's all right.
the version that I'm looking at in being played in front of me right now
Yeah.
um, is so significantly different from the version that is in Witcher 3 that I would consider it a completely different card game.
Oh, really?
Um, because Witcher 3's Gwent is based on the triple triad like progression of this is a card game to assume you will never fight a human ever.
Okay.
This is the way that it works is for CPUs, and you are leveling up your deck as you gain cards because every single person you beat gives you one card. And I look back on me going through Witcher 3, and I vividly remember that when Blood and Wine came out, I fucking started it up and went and beat every single card player in Blood and Wine and finished the Gwent deck, like completed it, and then put it on the shelf and did not come back to that expansion for over a year before I finally beat it, because getting those final cards was more important.
How would you say Gwent in the original game stacks up compared to, let's say, Triple Triad and Pazak?
Extremely well.
Okay,
I don't care for Pasak myself.
fair enough. I remember.
I would compare it much more closely to Triple Triad, particularly since a big part of FF8's Triple Triad was as you beat people, you would earn increasingly powerful cards.
Okay.
And you would get to the end of FF8 and you were dealing with a bullshit like the Chaos Rule or, whatever.
Yeah.
And you needed your big ass tough cards to deal with it. Witcher 3 does have a small advantage in that there are 3 or 4 storyline, like main story areas in which if you have a rockin' Gwent deck, you can totally make things easier on yourself in the actual storyline by actually winning the tournament instead of just flushing the fuck out.
Okay. Well, with Pazak, I'm a fan of Blackjack, so Blackjack 2 was fine by me.
Sure. Yeah.
Triple Triad, I had not played any game like that, and that turned out to be like a really fun, like, yeah, it's almost like a solitaire. You're not wrong. But in the case of Gwent, at least as far as the self-contained game goes, you're definitely playing a very PvP oriented thing. Like you're playing each other's cards, and you need to have a total by the end that's higher on your side than the other. You have 2 rows. You have a front row and a back row, and you can deploy soldiers or abilities, and then you can actually give them action points to then do their attacks on other cards, which lose their value as they come out. Now there's definitely I could see how the game would be fun when you start mixing and matching abilities to the way things work is like you can bring out a card which is like this card will attack a random card every time it gets a boost, and then the ways you can set that card to get a boost are numerous, right? So then you can build essentially a formation where you have this one card down that is basically like the cannon, or the gun, and then you set up a formation of batteries for the gun. And then it goes and shoots all the cards on the opposite end. So I was able to do stuff like that and win some games that way, and that was really fun.
My favorite card in Runeterra is very simple. It is a card that if any of your units dies, it drains 1 health from the enemy health pool and gives it to you. And so you just flood the deck with garbage. And just have your own units kill themselves and just bop, 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 bop. And they become afraid to attack you.
Did cards in Gwent have, were they all like characters with actions in the original?
Very few were.
Okay.
In the original Gwent, you had situations where you had the front line, the mid line, and the back line. And cards could only very rarely go and live in one. Most cards were numbers.
Okay.
Most cards were a number between 1 and 15.
Because
there were your spy cards, which you would give to the opponent, and you get to draw more cards. You'd have cards that would heal others. You would have cards that would if you played like a monster card, it would drag every one of those cards out of your deck to join it.
That happens, yeah. That still happens.
But I'd say like half the cards were just like, this card does 8. Right?
So
yeah.
So something that like makes this game interesting enough on its own would be you're stacking up. You're playing each other to count to get to a total count that's higher. So almost like not war. I forgot what the most it was one of those super basic card games where you're trying to just literally have a higher total, right? But the Geralt card will kill anything that is above a 9 or anything that gets buffed above a 9, right? So like you can, and there's 2, and you have to win 2 out of 3 rounds with the same deck. So it's really something that's interesting about this is that you can go heavy to make sure you win the first round and overplay to make your number as big as possible. And then in the second round, you're starving.
By far, Gwent's most interesting mechanic is its round system. Because there's this weird element of like, I have just enough cards to force you to play big motherfucking cards to barely win this round.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to stomp you the rest.
Well, what I noticed playing some PvP was that a lot of people that are, I guess, I mean, we're all beginners at this phase, but like a lot of the beginners I'm fighting have no concept of like when to pass, because passing in Gwent is the only way to, if we both pass, the round ends, we move on with the cards we have, and we can hopefully reset the situation. But doing so requires the player to admit that they lost the current round.
Which feels bad.
so no one does it. And as a beginner, no one's doing it. Everyone is using every single card they have to just try and get a biggest number possible, no
I'm
matter
gonna
what.
win this fucking round.
And I'm like, you have 4, I have 30. You're not going to catch back up with your next 2 cards. And they're like, no, watch me, right? So you get these moments of...
You can win the next round.
So that's an interesting mechanic where, like, you got to know when to call it, you know? And I like that in games. I like that a lot. It's because it's a moment of awareness. It's self-awareness about the game. It's strategic, you know, and it forces you to make a tactical decision to abandon a battle to win the war. And that is one of my favorite aspects of Go, which is my favorite board game. Go is like people make comparisons to things like chess and checkers, but Go is so much different because it's you engage in, imagine you're having these little fights in checkers or these fights in chess, but like each game of chess or checkers represents a specific area of the board that's a fight. And when you lose that fight, you have to internally make the decision to say, I'm out. If I keep putting units here, if I keep playing here and wasting my time here, I'm not going to win anything, and I'm going to further distract from setting up elsewhere. I can win the war by switching strategies. It's such a beautiful game, and it forces you to make these concessions, you know? If you try to bullhead your way through it, it'll lead to your demise. And the more stubborn you are, the harder you will lose, you know? So I like that in games, and Gwent having that aspect is a really fun thing to recognize. I wish more games had a 2-round system like that.
So I don't think anything has anything very close to Gwent's system. It's really definitive. You have to give up to win. It's very weird. The only thing that I can compare it to in my personal experience is because I've been playing so much Runeterra, is that I'm getting into this situation quite often because Runeterra has a very your big card games right now are Teppen, Gwent, Runeterra, and Hearthstone, right? And they all have completely different flows throughout the match. Hearthstone's like throw cards at the board, and then you put your hands out, and then your opponent throws cards at the board, and then you know they clash decks or whatever. You just described Gwent. You've described Teppen in the past. Teppen is like it's there's no fucking rounds in Teppen. It's just go.
Timing.
Every card is going and fighting simultaneously at all times. And Runeterra is
with the arrow. Anyway, go on.
Runeterra is somewhere in the middle of all that, where it's like, summon your cards. If you summon your cards, they get to summon their cards. Now play your cards. If you play your cards, then they can play their cards, or they could play a spell. If they do a spell, you can do a counter spell, and it's so 1-2 1-2 1-2 back and forth. And instead of the situation where it's like, do I want to bust my shit to win this round of Gwent, where the round is big, you only get to lose one. I'm in the situation where I'm staring at this fucking unit that I know is going to ruin my day if I leave it on the board. Like, I want it gone. And I have the spell to get it the fuck out of here. But they have 4 mana, and they have 40 cards, and they're from Ionia, which means there is a 3 in 40 chance that in the 5 cards I can see, one of those is Deny, which costs 4 mana, which just obliterates any spell you cast. And so I'm looking at that and going, do I want to risk it? Do I want to? Because if he doesn't have Deny, I could get this piece of shit off the board and I'll be in a really good position. But if he does have Deny, then I wasted my Grasp. And that's a higher value card than Deny is. And then he'll keep that piece of shit on the board. And then I won't be able to summon the guy that could block him. And it's way more granular. It's way more little victories that build up to the win. Probably, I don't know if I mentioned it before with Runeterra, but something about Runeterra that is the total opposite of what you are describing in Gwent, where no one wants to pass. I can't get a match to actually end in Runeterra anymore. I recently got to gold rank, and I'm stalled out in gold rank in Runeterra, and I have not seen one real match ending since silver.
As in, people just quit.
You get to the point of the match, it's about 14 draws in, and you both know who's going to win.
Okay.
And the loser surrenders.
Okay.
Like, because Runeterra because the way that the turns get confirmed, the guy, you load up your 6 dudes, and they're going to go attack on when you hit okay, and the other guy says, okay, I don't have anything to defend that. So instead of hitting pass to do nothing, they go into the upper right corner, hit the gear, and hit surrender instead.
Yeah, so, you know, in Teppen, when you know what's going on, people will do that. But again, there's always there's people that you can feel their arrogance in the style of play, and they'll just bleed it out the whole time. In some cases, like, there will be players where Teppen lets you fuck yourself over in such a way where it's possible for you to draw out such a bad poker hand that nothing can be played at the moment. Like, let's say you draw 5 control cards, but no cards are down on the board.
No units. Not a single unit.
Then you're stuck. You literally are stuck. There's nothing you can do. And some people will do that with a life discrepancy, you know? And it's like, well, if I don't play, you can't do anything. So now we just sit and stare at each other until you quit. But the mind game is maybe me, the winner, will be so impatient that I'll just quit before you. So now we're just playing a stupid game of patience. And I'm I'm a patient fool. I can sit here all day, you know?
There's a really awful sinking feeling in Runeterra that I can't admit to any other game that I can think of, where the guy's got 2 units on the board. Let's say they're good units, right? And he's got 2 cards and you've got 1 card, right? And he draws a card and puts it down, and then you draw a card and you look at it and you look at the board and you like, there is no combination of cards in my deck that can beat what he has on the board right now. There is literally no fucking way to math out a win out of the situation. And you're looking at it, and like eventually the timer starts to go. It's like, make your turn, and you're like, nah, surrender. Because like I have seen the funniest one though by far is, so when you load into a match in Runeterra, it gives you your 4 starting cards, and then it goes, do you want to re-roll these in case you get total garbage?
Yeah, you get 3 mulligans in the Gwent.
Yeah, so you can mulligan all 4 of them, and so you get 4, and it's like 6, 6, 7, 9, right? And you're like, no. And you mulligan them, and you get 5, 8, 8, 8. And you're like, I might as well just fucking surrender right now.
Yep. I've had that happen, and I've turned those around, but it depends on how shit your opponent is. Yeah.
And the reason why you don't is because the way that mana gets saved, so you get 1 mana, 2 mana, 3 mana to use it, and you can stock up to 3. You get into these really bizarre games where turn 1, 1/1, nobody has any 1/1 units. Turn 2, with 1 mana stocked, nobody has any 2 mana units. Turn 3, with 3 mana stocked, nobody has a 3 value unit or a spell under 6. And then you hit turn 4, and then it's just an explosion onto the fucking...
Because what you just described in Teppen is just seconds, right? 1 second, 1 mana, 1 more point to play. You will wait 10 seconds, and then fucking annihilation. Just 80 things happening at the same time.
Yeah.
And that, I've done that, like, because what you want to do in that particular instance is V, the mysterious one, is an 8 mana card, right? So you have to wait the 8 seconds for that to build up, or it's slower than 8 seconds actually, but you have to wait till you have your almost fulled up mana bar, and then you drop V, but the moment you drop him, you have to drop him like followed by a 1 mana card so that he can turn it into one of the summon boys. And in that moment where you're dropping him and the card in between him, there's times when they can mash hard enough and fast enough to kill your V before you drop the one right behind him. And
then you've just blown 8.
And then you surrender.
Yeah.
And then you just quit, you know, because it's all in one. But no, that's Gwent, and you know, I thought it was all right. It wasn't like incredible compared to, you know, it was not as addictive as I was hoping, I guess. But I have to learn more about it as is.
So was it literally your experience with like Pazak and FF8 that made you decide, Gwent?
Yeah, because I know that, like, I basically, in my head, I was always thinking, you know, I'm going to play The Witcher someday. And when I do, I can't wait to find out how good Gwent is, you know? And then at some point, I kind of just went, well, fuck it. Let's give it a shot right now.
I don't personally have a lot of experience with the version of Gwent that you're playing, because it is very different. It has to be, because it was not the version in The Witcher 3 is like unbalanced as shit.
The thought I had may have been prefaced by a particularly salty loss in Teppen.
Yeah, okay. I see that. I would, if you are now dipping your toe into non-Capcom card games, I would legitimately recommend you try out Runeterra, because it's fantastic. And it's the freest of all of them.
Is it on only on
It's on
PC?
everything you would play a card game on.
Okay.
I play it here, and I play it on my toilet.
Okay.
It may or may not have been one of the reasons I got a new phone.
I wasn't actually looking for a big, like, PvP type game, though. I was looking for a Pazak / Triple Triad experience, you know?
Well, the problem with that is that those are in single player games.
I know. Yeah.
I know people who, you know what? It's a lot longer. But there's a mod that you might be interested in for Witcher 3, the Gwent mod, where every combat encounter is turned into a Gwent battle.
That sounds wonderful.
The only problem is that it fucking takes forever.
Fair.
Because
we're
talking combat encounters that would have taken 5 seconds are now full games of Gwent.
Oh yeah, but turning The Witcher into a Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh-esque experience as fucking whatever, as you go on this adventure and fight bosses, but everything is done in the form of cards. That sounds pretty great. That sounds great.
I remember people saying that it was like a really cool idea that no one could get very far through, because there's just too much Gwent.